it happens. He makes his last at Madison Square Garden appearance on June 25th. It's in a loss to Andre the Giant. It's going to be his last appearance here for like nearly 5 years. And Bret Hart has said of this match, Andre, quote, practically killed him, end quote, and that Bam Bam just grabbed his bag and left. Did you hear about this, for lack of a better word, mauling in Bigelow's last MSG appearance against Andre?
God, I was there.
What do you remember about that night?
Just brutality. Bobby Heenan would tell the story that you could almost, well, maybe not almost, that you could hear Scott like just trying to get the hell out of there. And Andre, again, you go back and watch it. It's got to be on tape somewhere. Andre just pretty much manhandling him. And I think in some ways, I don't know if it was Andre trying to get Bam Bam to either fight back or, to see, okay, what are you made of, kid? And maybe if he had actually fought back with Andre, it might have been a different scenario. But the fact that he didn't, whether it was out of respect or out of he just couldn't, I don't have that answer. But Andre pretty much beat the shit out of him. And just brutalized him.
Isn't that like a catch-22 if you're one of the guys? Like on the one hand, because I feel like you nailed it. You want to be respectful. I mean, everything in wrestling is about respect, and you shake everybody's hand and you take care of the guys, and you never take liberties with guys, and you respect your veterans, and the veteran calls the match, blah, blah, blah. And now here you have a veteran beating the shit out of you, doing exactly what you're not supposed to do. And on the one hand, it feels like, well, this is a hazing thing and I'm supposed to just grin and bear it. But on the other hand,
I think most guys would look at it and say that if somebody's being really rough with you in the ring, and if you don't fight back, then you deserve what you get.
Okay.
So sometimes it can be as trivial as a test to say, all right, man, are you going to fight back? Are you going to do something? Or are you just going to be abused?
Let me ask you this though. And I'm not saying this to be funny. I'm just saying hypothetical, because I realize this is going to be a stretch the way I position it, but it's what we're talking about. If he would have fired off on Andre, and before you laugh, hurt Andre, when he comes back to the back after he's, sort of hurt the quote unquote golden goose, is there not going to be significant heat on him there? Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, to me, it's like practice in the NFL, right? You don't hit the quarterback. You don't hit the red jersey. So you're not going to mess with the golden goose. And I'm not saying that he was at that point. So clearly it was Hulk Hogan, but Andre's up there. And I just think about, man, if somebody would have did that maybe years later to a Shawn Michaels, if Shawn took a liberty, for instance, and they could hurt him, it feels like, boy, you'd have got your ass chewed when you went through the curtain. Sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Am I right?
I think there's a difference in fighting back and giving a receipt and letting somebody know, all right, you're going to hit me that hard. I'm going to hit you this hard, and let them know. And then, you figure it out from there to go out and hurt somebody. I don't think Andre was out to hurt him.
Yeah. There's a difference.
If Andre wanted to hurt him and take him out, Andre would have hurt him and taken him out.
Right.
So it wasn't that. And, who knows what Andre's motives were in that. It may have just been, I don't like you and I'm going to beat the shit out of you tonight, and you can fight me back, and we can fight and we can go. But who knows, at that point. And I think that if, Bam Bam had at least fired up some, been able to fire up, then don't know if it would have been a different outcome.
Was Andre untouchable in that era from Vince McMahon? I mean, when you said, oh, I remember this, I was there. So clearly Vince would have heard about it. Does Vince go to Andre and say, God damn, pal, trying to make some guys quit beating them up or whatever the fuck?
I think if it was excessive, yeah, definitely would. But you go back, it's like Warrior. One of the things that got Warrior over with Andre is through all that shit and Andre beating the living shit out of him. Warrior fought back.
Yeah.
Right, wrong, or indifferent. Shitty as Warrior was. He stood there, he took it, and he came back. So that was Andre like, okay, this is what you're going to get when you fuck up. But you know what? I'm going to work with you because you're in here fighting for it.
What an interesting subculture this is. Do you know if Andre and Bam Bam ever mended fences before Andre passed?
I have no idea. I don't really know.
Do you know if Andre went through sort of, every now and again when guys have shall we say a moment of clarity, they're going to go around and try to make amends. And you often hear that people do that when they're fresh out of recovery or when they feel like, man, I'm not in good health. This might be winding down for me.
Not that I've ever really heard of. And I don't know that, for the most part, I don't know of anybody that Andre would have done that with.
According to the rumor and innuendo, quote, Bigelow had gotten the superstar attitude from Japan and rubbed some people the wrong way who resented his being used on top immediately. He was roughed up on a couple of occasions, once by Andre the Giant and another time by Sika of the Wild Samoans who busted his nose. He grew up with nothing and fell in a bad crowd. He got rich and famous very quickly, but he made a lot of bad choices. He really didn't handle the fame, the money, or the women very well and went into a downward spiral. Do you remember the whole Sika thing where maybe he was rubbing him the wrong way too? You explained the Andre thing. He just didn't like big guys. But Sika, how would we have gotten sideways there if you had to guess?
I don't really remember, but I do remember, the time frame after kind of the first year of being pushed to the moon and being the guy and being talked about. Oh my God, this is the guy that, was going to replace Hulk. This is the guy. It's an awful lot to absorb. In the beginning, Scott came in as a very humble guy, and he really, again, he did well. He did well handling it when you look at his age and you look at what he hadn't been through. Okay. A lot kind of got dumped. It kind of goes back to Larry Sharp and people saying, oh, well, Larry's pissing in his ear, and just kind of, they made excuses for him.
I see.
But I think that it was just age and lack of maturity and too much too soon. Again, I've seen guys handle it worse. So, and maybe it's just because I always liked Scott. I always thought he was a really, really nice guy and a pretty humble guy. So I probably, would make excuses as well for him. But I think, when you step back and you look at it, yeah, maybe he could have handled some things better.
What leads to his eventual exit in 1988? Is it these personnel issues with Andre and Sika and those types where he's just rubbing people the wrong way? Or is it the way it was recapped? He didn't really handle the fame, the money, or the women very well. Do you think it was just became too much of the rock star lifestyle? We're not focused on our work as much as we are having a good time?
I think it was more than anything the reality of the situation, in that maybe he needs a little more time away from here to mature and to hone his craft a little more.
So